All right, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the NetOps Expert. And I am super happy to be joined today by Shamus McGillicuddy. He is the VP of Research for Network Infrastructure and Monitoring at Enterprise Management Associates. Shamus, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do, a little bit more about what you do at EMA, and then we will get right into the content today.
So I'm the Research Vice President at EMA for Network Infrastructure and Operations. So I do a lot of research into what networking people in the enterprise space mostly are doing, whether it's in the cloud, the wide area network, the campus, what they're doing with their tools, what they're doing with their network design and implementation. I survey thousands of people a year. I talk to dozens on a quarterly basis about what they're doing, trying to figure out what they need, what they want, and what their sources of pain are.
Excellent. You know what? And that brings up a really good point, because today we are going to talk about your latest research. And what I'd like to bring up today is some of the latest research that you had come out in August of this year. And it was really about our new hybrid work environment, right? So your latest research, modernizing network engineering and operations in the era of hybrid and remote work. Before we get into asking you about that research, do you want to just talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. We surveyed hundreds of IT professionals, mostly like network engineering and operations people, but also some security people, some IT executives, some end user support types, just to get a sense of like what IT organizations are doing to support the connectivity requirements and the security requirements, secure remote connectivity requirements, and visibility requirements of people who are working from home, but also looking at how hybrid work, which is, describes workers who kind of move between a corporate site and their home office or something else like a coffee shop, how those people are changing on-premises networks. Like, hey, all these people want more bandwidth when they're in the office. They want more mobility, things like that. So we're trying to look at that as well.
All right, excellent. Well, regarding that research and data you have in here, I'd love to dive into some of that data so a lot of our listeners can understand exactly where the research is leading, what other enterprises out there are maybe dealing with the same challenges that some of our Broadcom enterprise NetOps customers are dealing with. So, some of the stats you have in that report, you talk about, supporting remote work has an increased workload of almost close to 75%, 73% for NetOps teams today. And only 32% of those organizations have been completely successful in supporting this hybrid work environment. So what do you think the roadblocks are for that larger portion that has not seen that success yet?
Well, the question was asking like how you support, like how successful are you with supporting the networking requirements of these people? And what you're seeing is most of the time the networking team really isn't calling the shots. It's quite often the security group that's making a lot of decisions. Like cybersecurity takes the lead, and they're mostly focused on locking things down. User experience is secondary to them. So what you're seeing is network teams need to really impose more influence or find more influence over what things are used to provide the connectivity to these people that are working from home. Okay, so we've adopted a secure remote connectivity solution, but does that secure connection actually do anything or have anything to say about the experience of that user? Can you optimize the ISP they're using to connect? Something like that. Also, they lack tools often to monitor user experience. I know, like, when I was first talking to people a couple of years ago about what they're doing to deal with the surge in remote work during the pandemic, one thing I heard quite often was, well, what I'm doing to monitor end user experience for my remote workers is I've pointed my monitoring tool, my network monitoring tool at my VPN concentrator so I can see exactly what's happening with it. That's not enough. So network teams need to fight for budget to update and modernize, expand their tool sets to address that visibility gap. And they're also going to need the time to solve those problems, and perhaps more people. You're going to see some skills gaps and resource shortages around the whole project.
More and more every day, we hear about the reasons why security and the SOC and the NOC need to be collaborating a lot more. You talked about security teams were implementing a lot of policies to put in place when this hybrid work experience, happened at the beginning of the pandemic. And of course, the more security rules in place, the harder it is for those remote workers to gain access to resources without working with the network operations team. So again, just another great example of why the NOC and the SOC should be collaborating more and more and more every day. You talked about the security teams, and I know a lot of the folks that you have talked to, as well as our customers, are implementing security beyond VPN, right? SASE and zero trust and all that. But I also know you've had some research in the past that talked about the success of SASE is dependent upon many things, but one, a successful SD-WAN deployment. Can you talk about the reasons why SD-WAN is so important to SASE, as well as that entire implementation improving productivity for the hybrid work experience?
So SD-WAN is the connectivity component of any SASE network. I mean, it's a SASE solution. SASE is Secure Access Service Edge, and that it refers to the convergence of SD-WAN and an array of network and cybersecurity capabilities that are usually delivered via the cloud, and also some sort of secure remote access solutions integrated into that as well, like zero trust network access, or even like a legacy or cloud-based VPN. So there's all this security and visibility, like security monitoring and security control in the cloud. You need to be able to reach it and then go on to whatever resource you're trying to provide connectivity to through it. The SD-WAN piece is the foundation then, because the SD-WAN piece is connecting all the sites, at the very least, connecting all your corporate sites into the secure service edge component, and also into all the applications that are at the other end of that connection. If that SD-WAN foundation is not stable, mature, operationalized, then the SASE component is often, the SASE evolution is often going to go off the rails. So if you have a lot of complexity in your SD-WAN environment, that complexity is going to translate into SASE complexity. For instance, maybe you have two SD-WAN vendors for whatever reason, and then you're trying to integrate both of those SD-WAN environments into one secure service edge component. It just gets really messy. Now, in terms of the relevance to hybrid work, a lot of enterprises have adopted, well, maybe like 10, 15, 20% have adopted SD-WAN as a hybrid connectivity solution. They're deploying, I've talked to some one-on-one who've told me they deployed SD-WAN boxes into a lot of home offices to give them better performance, because SD-WAN often has like some optimization and remediation capabilities to improve the performance of the network. And so they drop those boxes into a home office to improve the experience of the remote worker. And then that connectivity into SASE cloud POPs, security POPs is then enabled as well. So that's what role SD-WAN plays into remote connectivity and into the whole SASE conversation.
I tell you, it's getting more and more complex. So another data point that you have in your latest research on hybrid and remote work, which is you say 83% of organizations have extended the cloud edge, moving applications closer to remote users to reduce latency and improve experience. So my question to you is, how are they getting closer to these apps? How are they moving these apps closer? What's the tech involved in that? And are there any visibility gaps that have appeared with the folks that you surveyed?
So what I've seen and heard is that a lot of enterprises found that when they went from office to remote, they had a lot of employees just further away from where their applications lived. And it became worse and worse over time because over the last few years, enterprises realized that in terms of hiring, if they removed geography from the equation, they could hire the best talent regardless of where it was, right? So let's say your company is based in California. Most of your applications are deployed in a data center in California. And maybe you had some people on the East Coast, but not enough and not critical enough for you to think about their user experience being impacted by having to access applications across a continent. But then let's say you started hiring people in London and Florida and Canada. Like suddenly all those people are starting to complain, or at least gripe to somebody about how every application they use that is based in California performs poorly. So what do? A lot of these enterprises, they deploy into new clouds or new cloud regions. So like, we're going to deploy something in New Jersey with AWS, and let's deploy something with Azure in London and get better performance. So really extending the cloud edge for the initial stage is let's deploy into new cloud providers and new cloud regions that are closer to our more distributed workforce now that we're hiring people all over. Now they might also get even more further out to the edge, like maybe deploying into like cloud edge offerings from IT service providers and cloud providers, something that's not necessarily delivered through an infrastructure as a service region or location, but something more closer to the edge, like maybe in a 5G tower somewhere or something. But that's more advanced. I don't think a lot of people are doing a lot of that just yet. In terms of visibility, so that's an old story. A lot of NetOps teams are trying to monitor the cloud with the tools that they have traditionally used to monitor their data center networks. And those tools vary in their ability to provide visibility into the cloud and also into the WAN or internet connections that your remote workers are using to access those cloud applications. So for instance, you're not seeing necessarily the network conditions between your remote users' offices, home offices, and the cloud applications, traversing over some ISP in the middle of North Dakota or something. And so you start thinking, well, maybe I need to start using some active monitoring tools that can send some synthetic traffic from my employees' home offices to the cloud, for instance, instead of just monitoring the switches in my data center and maybe the using CloudWatch from AWS to see the health of the workloads in the cloud. I need to understand the internet a little better because of all this distributed edge.
Let me move on. You talk about remote work is making it harder for network operations teams to resolve network problems. So maybe just give us some examples of what you've heard from the folks you've surveyed, specific use cases around users calling in and complaining. I know we talked about the fact that workers are at home and they complain something slower than when it was when they were in the office. But are there any other use cases out there you've heard from the folks you've talked to?
Sure. So the data point itself that you're referring to is that the mean time to resolve a network problem has gotten longer since people started working from home at large scales. So it's taking the NetOps team, network engineering teams, longer to solve individual problems. And one network engineer kind of described it to me very well. He said that the NetOps teams have gone from managing one overall environment to two, or maybe you could say an infinity, because a lot of people are hybrid and they're moving from on-prem to the home. They're working in coffee shops and on buses, in planes, so all sites remain relevant. Like the corporate offices remain relevant, but now they've got all this other stuff to manage as well. 40% of remote workers are hybrid, according to our research. So they're in the office, they're at home every given week, and NetOps is still trying to maintain services on-prem while also doing something about the home office. And so they just have more to cover. Another network engineer told me, like, one day we had 25,000 people working in a handful of offices. Now we have 25,000 people working in 25,000 offices. How do you scale that, in terms of visibility and operations? It's a huge problem, and a lot of the work they're doing in those home offices is not optimal. The number one tool that people use to monitor and troubleshoot end user network experience in a home office is a remote desktop access tool. So to solve problems, they're remoting into a desktop in someone's home, and then doing things like, okay, now I'm gonna test the Wi-Fi signal through your Mac or whatever, and now I'm going to reboot your computer, or let's update this app and see if that fixes it. It's like you can do that like 25,000 times in a day, and also so you're trying to answer fundamental questions about infrastructure that you no longer own, like the Wi-Fi router or whatever you want to call it in a home office, and the modem and the ISP health and performance. I was supposed to have a meeting yesterday at 2:00, and like 15 minutes before the meeting started, Comcast went down for an hour. And because Comcast went down, my Verizon wireless connection became like glacially slow because everyone else in my neighborhood was using their mobile phones to get work done. So I couldn't do anything. I couldn't tell if the world was ending. So I couldn't even ask for help, so that's the kind of problem domain you're dealing with now.
Can you talk about the ability for NOC and network operations teams today to use enterprise software from vendors like Broadcom to go from understanding and improving mean time to resolution and really understanding how to acquire mean time to innocence? So the ability to be able to use vendor software out there today to prove it's not our network, it's either the ISP, the cloud, or even the home Wi-Fi. How important is that?
It's very important, and also a lot of people prefer the term mean time to insight versus mean time to innocence, because that implies that not only have you proven your your innocence, but you can also like point to where the problem is and help solve it, regardless of the fact that it's outside your domain. Like, I can see that this problem is not the network; it's actually our SaaS provider. Their data center is suddenly like adding 30 seconds of latency for some reason, or speaking of Comcast, like Comcast has decided BGP routing on Comcast has suddenly decided that all of my employees in the Northeast are being routed to an AWS region in Northern California, as opposed to where they're supposed to go, which is New Jersey, right? That I've seen that happen, because I'll see like an application run really slow, and I'll do a network trace, and I'll see that suddenly Comcast is routing me all the way across the country for some reason. And then I try calling Comcast and asking them to, I know it's this router. Here's the IP address. Can you please just do something about this? And they're like, I don't know how to do that.
Exactly, because you have level 1.
Yeah, they're like, have you tried rebooting your modem?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not gonna do anything.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, so you need tools that can give you answers, and hopefully you have better access to customer support than me as an Xfinity customer. And so you can say, here's the routing issue. Here's this router is causing my East Coast employees problems. So what you need is you need better visibility into the internet with a tool that like actively monitors the internet from the edge, but also perhaps from points of presence across the internet, so you can see where traffic is going. So yeah, Broadcom offers that. There's a growing number of vendors that are trying to do that through acquisition or homegrown tools that like Broadcom AppNet I'm thinking of. That actively monitors things by injecting synthetic traffic into the internet and seeing what happens and what comes back, and being able to pinpoint problems to specific hops on the network or specific services that are relevant to your business, and providing the NetOps team with the intelligence to say, here's the router that's causing the problem from our ISP, here's the SaaS service that's at fault, here is the network device in our network that's causing problems, which you would get through traditional tools as well. But it's basically expanding how you monitor things, like to get past just SNMP MIBs and traps and NetFlow, and looking at ways to get visibility into the things that are opaque to those tools, like the internet and the cloud.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing. Here at Broadcom and on my team, we call those the unmanaged networks, the ones that we aren't admins of anymore, but our network traffic is now going over. So definitely being able to get more insights, and I'm going to tell my team that we're going to steal that from you, meantime to insights. So definitely like how that is talked about when it comes to not only discovering that your network is fine, but understanding the root cause of where the issue is in an unmanaged network like ISPs. My last question here is, and again, I want to thank you for your time today and your expertise. Again, when we talk about your recent August research around network operations and its support of hybrid and remote workers, Figure 13 reveals that 90% of companies have reorganized IT operations to better support workers at home in recent years. Can you tell us how they've done this? Give us some examples that may be relevant to other folks that are listening that may be struggling with some challenges around hybrid workers.
There are a lot of aspects to this. You think about it from this perspective. In the home office, the only corporate asset in that home office a lot of the time is the computer, whether it's a laptop or maybe a tablet even. So that's the branch, is that computer. And who owns that? It's not networking, it's not security, it's like end user computing or end user support, the desktop team, whatever. They own those devices, and now that is your only point of access into that home office. So what do you do? You got to strategically think about how you align with the group that owns that. As a NetOps team, you need to address the connectivity to that device, and your only view into the state of connectivity is device owned by someone else. So you're going to partner with those groups, either formally, informally. Maybe the middle management needs to talk together about how you're going to maybe allow the network team to deploy some kind of agent on that device, and so you just have to open up conversations with end user support. Another motion that's going to happen is security team often, I find that a lot of the time, 5-10 years ago, the network team owned the VPNs, right? You had if you needed remote access to your network from the home, you used a VPN, a legacy VPN connection. The network team owned that because it was like the VPN concentrator is like a device that the network team owned at the data center, and they were just like, okay, we'll handle all things VPN, right? But now next generation remote connectivity solutions are often owned by the security group, whether it's a zero trust network access solution or secure access service edge or software defined perimeter. Those security teams are usually adopting those solutions. The network team might have to support it in some way. So now you got to work with the security team, figure out how to manage that with them, because the security team doesn't really care about or even understand how to manage user experience when it comes to secure remote connectivity. They're just interested in making sure the connection is secure. So the network team has to come in and partner with that group and say, okay, you are going to maintain security policy, but we're going to manage this solution in a way that makes sure that the thing is actually secure, right? Is actually performing as expected. So that means that you have to have meetings with and talk about how you're going to work together with the security group. So the reorganization involves like these groups figuring out how to work together. Now, some enterprises might even just say, okay, we're going to just get rid of the silos altogether and put together a hybrid work operations team that is, thinking about everything from device to network to security for people who are working from home, and we're just going to bring specialists in from all these different groups and make that happen. I haven't actually talked to anyone one-on-one that's doing that, but I mean the level of reorganization that's happening indicates that's probably going on somewhere to some extent. In terms of whether it's successful or not, hard to say, but the fact that only 32% of people in our research say they've been fully successful with addressing the networking needs of remote workers suggests that it's not been that successful overall. A lot of people see some room for improvement.
Shamus, I want to thank you today. We definitely have other topics that we're going to talk about around SD-WAN, about AI and analytics. But is there anything you want to promote about research that is coming up or that you may have coming out before the end of the year or starting of next year?
Sure. Right now I'm getting ready to look at network and security team collaboration, like in total, like within enterprise. We're going to survey hundreds of people in IT organizations and ask them, like, tell us about how your network team is working with the security group and why, and like, what's happening around tools, around data, around infrastructure that requires this and enables it and challenges it. So that's on the horizon. And then after that, I'm doing some research on network automation strategies, because our research shows that a lot of most enterprises have a mix of homegrown open source tools and commercial tools to automate networking. And so we're just looking at why there's still such a mix of both, and how people can get more mature around network automation in the future.
Again, Shamus, I want to thank you for your time today. I will put a link into this where your latest research on network operations support for hybrid and remote work is. And we will talk again soon. I appreciate you hanging out with me on the NetOps Expert. And everyone have a wonderful day.